Dear participants, we are all ready to start another insightful and eventful day. We have our resource person with us, Dr. Aravind Nair. I invite Deepa, the moderator of the morning sessions, to lead the session. Deepa, please.
Good morning. We are truly honored to have Dr. Aravind R. Nair, an accomplished academic and assistant professor of English at Sacred Hearts College, Devra. He completed his MA in English Literature from the University of Hyderabad, furthering his studies with an MPhil from the English and Foreign Language University. His thirst for knowledge led him to defend his doctoral thesis titled Untangling Science and Actor Network Analysis of Select Science Fiction Writing at the esteemed University of Kerala. His areas of expertise span a wide array of captivating subjects, including science fiction studies, cyberculture, history and philosophy of science, fiction and film, speculative fiction, climate fiction, and eco criticism. Once again, a very hearty welcome to Dr. Aravind R. Nair. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Deepa, for that very wonderful introduction. I hope I am being audible to all the audience.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. So it's a wonderful feeling to be spending this morning, Sunday morning, with you, all of you. I know that the weather is fine outside, especially in our part of the world, in Kerala. We are currently heading into that time of the year when the beauty of nature is at its finest, and it's almost inviting us to be a part of it and to take part in that celebration of life that is going on all around us. So it is also a time when such an international conference becomes a really relevant one, because while celebrating life and the beauty of it, we are also now going through a sort of a very um, uh, what do you say, an inflection point in our history, where our very definition of what life is being challenged. Um, the theme of the seminar addresses many concerns of you know what the impact of AI could be on our society and our way of life. And my session today is going to hopefully touch upon a few of these themes. Uh, I want to make this session as interactive as possible, so I will probably talk for about 1 hour, followed by hopefully some questions and answers from your part on some of the things that we are going to see. So let me just try to share my screen so that I can share my presentation with you. I hope my screen is visible.
Yes, sir, it is visible.
Okay, thank you. So I have titled my session "Reading Science Fiction in the Age of AI." As Deepa mentioned in her introduction, my area of expertise has been science fiction, and uh, I have read quite a number of works in which science fiction has engaged with artificial intelligence, the question of how to negotiate a social existence in tandem with artificially intelligent beings. So one of the crucial ideas that I want to convey today is that although the question of artificial intelligence may be perplexing for us, um, many answers might be found in works of science fiction, or science fiction can actually guide us through some of the dilemmas or problems that we might encounter. Okay. So I want to begin by talking about the current climate that we are in. I already mentioned that this is a wonderful weather that we are having, but more than that, we live in a very strange sort of a time. I'm actually reminded of the beginning of Charles Dickens' A Tale of Two Cities, in which he begins the novel by saying that it is the best of times as well as the worst of times. Right. Of course, he's speaking about the French Revolution and how Paris was going through a kind of a bloodbath, as well as hoping for a new age of freedom and individuality and equality and all of those ideals. So we too find ourselves in a sort of a very strange climate. So as a student of literature, I would like to begin by looking at what Charles Dickens has said. It is very interesting to go through that first introductory paragraph of his novel. So he calls it as the age of wisdom as well as the age of foolishness, an epoch of belief, an epoch of incredulity, a season of light, a season of darkness, hope and despair, everything and nothing, good and evil. So in all of these, antagonistic terms or oxymorons, as we call them, he uses to describe that very tumultuous climate. So how else do we also describe the point of time that we are in? On the one hand, these the last couple of years, it has promised us great advances in our quality of life through the application of AI technologies. Uh, Nothing short of utopia itself is promised before us. We find that you know through the impact through the application of artificial intelligence, our healthcare system can greatly benefit. Uh, we we have, you know we have, we keep on reading articles about how diagnostic medicine is going to go through a revolution, because AIs can actually detect anomalies in various medical reports, whether it is an X-ray or an MRI or even an ECG. The variations in those reports can be much more accurately detected by artificial intelligence than a real doctor. So there is no doubt that healthcare, economy, environment, education, safety, scientific research, all these key fundamental aspects of life are going to be impacted by artificial intelligence. And we can only look at this change in a positive light. um, of course, who wouldn't want a better economy? Who wouldn't want a better environment, or your education system to become much more foolproof with the advance of artificial intelligence devices? Scientific research as well. Recently, I think last week, I read an article that even a science like astrophysics, astronomy, is being revolutionized through artificial intelligence, because uh, the data from all of those satellites and instruments that we have in orbit around our planet, it is too much for ordinary human beings, scientists to analyze. So feeding it through artificially intelligent agents, systems, can actually speed up the process of discovery of new scientific principles and exoplanets, planets outside our solar system, and these things. So from alpha to omega, from A to Z, all of our areas of scientific inquiry are being changed by this technology. So on the other hand, this is not the only thing that we have to face. Just like it is an age of hope, it is also an age of despair, because the very people who have given us these technologies have expressed their extreme concerns regarding its uncontrolled, unregulated use. For instance, you might have heard of this open letter that was written by more than 3,000 prominent figures, notable figures, AI scientists, social uh, leaders, uh, as an open letter to the entire global community. And there's a very short open letter which has only one sentence in it, and this is the sentence. So they just want humanity to be prepared to mitigate the risk of extinction from AI, and it should be a global priority alongside other societal scale risks such as pandemics and nuclear war. So, very suddenly, the number of threats to humanity seems to have gone up by one. Because still 2 years ago, we only had to deal with a pandemic or the possibility of nuclear war. But today we stand being threatened by yet another event which is capable of causing the entire extinction of the human race. So why is AI that dangerous? Um, One of the problems which I will talk about in detail a bit ahead in my presentation, is that what we know as AI today is an emergent phenomenon. Right? It is a phenomenon which is not fully understood by the creators themselves. It is a property which emerges from extreme complexity. Just like we say that our consciousness arises from the fact that we have so many billions and billions of neurons in our brain, and it is not really possible to scientifically explain how we are conscious or what our mind is. AI is almost similar in that aspect. We cannot really delve into the nitty gritties of AI and really explain it. So what happens when we become more and more dependent on something that we don't fully understand? And it is from this fear that the risk of global extinction or an apocalypse arises. And so this is the other part of it. This is the dystopian, or the threat of AI. So poised in the middle of these two poles or extremes, um, it is natural to feel a little bit lost. It seems like all of this is very new. It is all unprecedented, right? But it is in this juncture that we can really depend on science fiction, because most of these scenarios have been part of science fiction for many decades and even centuries, right? Starting from the 19th century, where novels like Frankenstein were written. Frankenstein is considered to be the first work of science fiction. Starting from that work, science fiction has really explored what it is to interact with a creation who is as capable of thought as you yourself. So for science fiction, this is not really new. So I would like to, show you a very small video clip from a very famous science fiction movie called Blade Runner, which came out in 1982. Many of you might be familiar with this. In fact, a sequel to this was recently released, I think a couple of years ago. And this novel, I mean, this movie is made based on a novella by the famous American science fiction writer Philip K. Dick. And the main characters in this novel are androids. They are humans, but they are artificial. Right? They resemble humans in every way, except that they don't have a childhood. They are fully formed. Their memories are artificially introduced into their mind just so that they can work, in collaboration with real humans. So this scene comes towards the end of the movie, where one particular android is, you know, accepting its mortality. Right. This android realizes that the real humans will never accept it as a member of their society, and it will always be hunted down. So here we have this main character, this android, preparing for death. And as he confronts his enemy, he delivers this monologue, which is considered to be one of the greatest monologues of uh, any kind of movie, not just science fiction movie. So let me just try to play that.
I've seen things You people wouldn't believe. Attack ships on fire off the shoulder of Orion. I watched sea beams glitter in the dark near the Tannhauser Gate. All those moments will be lost in time, like tears in rain. Time to die.
Okay, so this is the scene. What is interesting about this scene is that um, it is an android who is speaking, who is a creation, but his words are so poetic. They are so beautifully sensitive towards the beauty of life and the inevitability of death, which even leaves the human protagonist speechless. Um, so I hope that all of you have experimented with ChatGPT, and maybe you have asked ChatGPT or other large language models to generate some kind of creative content for you. Maybe write a song or write a poem or a story, and it is astonishing to really experience the creativity of these machines, right? So we are facing a very great ethical dilemma whether to accept that these machines are capable of creating new things, new literature, new ways of expression, which has hitherto been only the privilege of humans. Okay. So science fiction, like this movie, has addressed these concerns, and as we move on further, I would like to tell you some of the possible solutions that it presents. Now, coming to science fiction's engagement with these technologies of artificial intelligence, the very first science fiction novel which I mentioned, Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, uh, itself is a very educational text to engage with, because when we look at Frankenstein, or the modern Prometheus, as its subtitle was, uh, we see that Mary Shelley is actually talking about the creation of a thinking being, right? So it is not really a monster, although various movie adaptations of Frankenstein, and even in popular culture, there is a trope, a very famous trope about a scientist bringing a body to life, and as the body finally gains some sort of movement, the scientist exclaims out loud, "It is alive! It is alive!" This is something that we often see in science fiction movies and cartoons, and even in other places. So that comes from Frankenstein, but it is not a spectacle, right? What Frankenstein shows us is not the spectacle of a dead body coming back to life, but it is actually the gradual making of a thinking being. So we see that the monster, after being abandoned by Victor Frankenstein, its creator, it sort of undergoes the same processes through which a child develops into a full grown human being, starting with the acquisition of language, the discovery of fire, cooking, the ability to reason, and finally the creation. The monster begins to question its identity. It begins to question the reason behind its existence, and why its creator abandoned it, rather than showing it any kind of empathy or respect or love. And the emotion that stands out among the responses of the monster is rage. Right? It is actually rage that is most prominent. So if you go through some of the lines spoken by the monster, you see how fully human it is. It is not a half human being, right? For example, it says, "I was benevolent. My soul glowed with love and humanity. But am I not alone, miserably alone? You, my creator, abhor me. What hope can I gather from your fellow creatures who owe me nothing? If the multitude of mankind knew of my existence, they would do as you do and arm themselves for my destruction. Shall I not then hate them who abhor me? I will keep no terms with my enemies. I am miserable, and they shall share my wretchedness." How was I terrified when I viewed myself in a transparent pool? At first, I started black. This is about the monster recognizing its own ugliness, right? So when it is born, when it is first brought to life, it is not aware of the comparative standards of beauty, right? It cannot compare itself to another human being. But once it enters into this kind of a what we call the symbolic sphere, right? It realizes that it is not considered to be beautiful. It is considered to be hideous. Most people would run away when seeing it. But this is a moment when the monster itself considers the self to be ugly, right? It discovers that you know you know the creator has made it into something which is to be feared, right? So it says, "And when I became fully convinced that I was in reality the monster that I am, I was filled with the bitterest sensations of despondence and mortification. Cursed creator, why did I live? Why in that instant did I not extinguish the spark of existence which you had so wantonly bestowed?" So here, the monster is actually contemplating suicide. It is saying, "Why did I not kill myself? Because I have been given a life which is not to be shared in the company of others, which cannot benefit from any sort of affection from society. I know not. Despair had not yet taken possession of me. My feelings were those of rage and revenge." Okay. So what is interesting about this, taken from that first science fiction book, is that we see this artificial creation gaining extremely human feelings, right? uh, it is not only able to think rationally. Maybe we can create a machine which is able to solve mathematical equations very rationally, solve logical uh, problems without any difficulty. But to create a feeling being, to create a life which is capable of emoting, uh, is something which is very, very ethically complex, right? So one way which scientists have tried to really gauge whether artificial intelligence is alive or not is through something called the Turing test, right? Which is named after the famous mathematician Alan Turing. So this Turing test, basically what it is there is a person who is made to interact with an AI, but the person cannot directly understand whether it is an AI or a human being, right? He's not told, or she's not told that you are talking to a machine or a human being. But after carrying on this conversation for a considerable amount of time, the observer has to decide whether he or she was speaking to an AI or not. In case the observer is not able to distinguish or understand that it was an AI, it was an artificial being which is on the other side of that conversation, then we can consider that artificial intelligence to be fully intelligent, right? Fully human in a sense. Okay. So this test, for a long time, since the 1940s when it was first proposed, up till very recently, this test was supposed to be foolproof, right? Even if you had artificial assistants like Siri or Google Google Assistant in your phones, you could never mistake them for another human being. You only had to talk to them for a bit, and that is enough to convince you that it is actually a machine who is on the other end. But recently, with ChatGPT 3.5, this particular Turing test has been broken. ChatGPT can actually pass the Turing test, which means it is not possible to really distinguish between a conversation carried on by an actual human being and a conversation which is carried on by ChatGPT. Okay, we cannot, unless you directly see a person, you cannot really, determine that you are talking to a human or not. So this raises, problems of, uh, whether we should really, give some rights, duties, responsibilities that we give to human beings to artificial intelligences as well. So, is this, is what we have a very dangerous situation? Is it a dire prognosis? So, we can find a kind of an answer in another science fiction work, which is, a play actually, RUR, called not RRR, it is RUR, which came much before that. Rossum's Universal Robots, which was a play written by Carol Chapek in 1920. So this play is famous because it is the first literary work to introduce the word robot, uh, you know, to our vocabulary. So in this play, what happens is you have an inventor who creates a very lifelike, human-like robot, and they use these robots to make life easier. Right? They keep creating these servants to make various aspects of living, very very easy. Uh, but ultimately, this kind of a society reaches, a sort of a saturation point where the robots finally understand that they are being exploited, that they don't have rights in this society, that they are being treated as slaves. So you have a revolution, a sort of a rising up of the robots, and almost all of humankind is killed. And in the end, the robots themselves, kind of gain the power to reproduce. Right? Um, the male and female robots, they somehow find a way to create another generation of robots. So essentially, this is one of the scenarios that is being discussed as a threat to us, right? Once these artificial intelligences are able to somehow migrate from just computer systems to actual, mechanical or you know, biomechanical bodies, um, how can we as flesh and blood humans compete with them? Right? They are bound to be stronger than us, being made of metal or whatever. They are bound to be more capable of memory than us. They can remember any fact. They can remember their whole life, each moment, while we forget. They never grow old. um, they are capable of thinking much faster than us, capable of calculating, predicting things that human beings cannot do. So how can we coexist with such creatures? Right? So one of the solutions that, as the novel goes on, one of the solutions that the creators come up with is that uh, the problem with these robots is that they are universal. They are Rossum's universal robots, which means all of those robots can easily communicate with each other. They all speak the same language uh, to communicate. So, in order to prevent them from unifying into a sort of a threat to humankind, they propose that we will differentiate them. Right? It is just like the myth, or the legend of the Tower of Babel, where initially all humans everywhere were able to speak and communicate in one tongue. But then God decided that, or some supreme power decided that this is not a good idea, and gave different languages to human beings and divided them. So like that, the creators of these robots decide that each robot factory will now make the robots different. They will be of a different color, different hair, different language, and they will be strangers to each other. And instead of recognizing each other as brothers or sisters, they will hate each other, right? So will we, in the future, in our society too, adopt such a solution? If we find that our AI brothers and sisters are becoming too powerful, will we try to make them hate each other? Is that a viable solution? That's a question that a text like RUR makes us think about. Okay. So the questions of reason, identity, selfhood, till very recently we have only considered these questions as human problems, right? These are human problems. These are problems for sociologists, problems for literary theorists, problems for philosophers. But tomorrow we might actually have to consult with a computer programmer or a mathematician or a physicist in order to settle some of these questions. So that is the world that we are, going into. Now, the next, main idea that I want to talk about is the term emergence, which you might already have encountered over the course of some of the other sessions. Um, Emergence is the phenomena by which extremely complex networks show intelligent properties or properties of intelligence, right? So all of these artificial intelligences that are available to us right now, they are all extremely complex networks, neural networks, and they contain billions and billions of individual units, individual computing units, neural units, which are all linked together in extremely complex networks. And it is using their complexity that they are able to perform tasks which resemble intelligence, right? So the question of these emergent phenomena, right? It is not fully understood by the programmers themselves, the people who made these neural networks. So although the neural networks themselves are artificial, they are actually what we consider to be black boxes. In science, a black box is something which we don't have any information about, right? We don't know what is inside this black box. So a neural network is also like a black box. We can just observe the input and we can observe the output. We can input a query to some sort of a artificial intelligence, and we can observe the answer. But the actual process through which that answer is generated is very complex, right? It goes through millions and millions of iterations, millions and millions of calculations between those individual elements, and it is not really possible to understand it. So this has also been dealt with in various science fiction novels. So I would like to point out one such novel. There are many, but one novel which talks about it in a very lucid way is Ian M. Banks' novel, 2004 novel, The Algebraist. So I don't know whether Ian M. Banks is a very familiar author to you. He was a Scottish novelist. He is famous for writing both mainstream novels as well as science fiction novels. And this particular novel, it talks about a very futuristic society set in outer space. Um, and in this society, AI is considered to be, anathema. Anathema means something which is against religious beliefs. So according to the society in the Algebraist, an AI is an abomination. It is a monster. So there are these, AI systems, right? And sometimes they capture these AI systems and they interrogate them, and trying to understand what their motivations are. So the reason why AI is considered dangerous is because there was a war in that society between human beings and AIs, in which the AIs almost won, okay, wiping out the human race. So since that incident, the society has decided that we will not suffer AIs to exist. We will not allow any such artificial intelligence. I want to between a human and an AI. So in this excerpt from that novel, Fasten, the character, is a human being, and he's talking to an old man who's actually an AI. Right, the appearance of the old man is just an avatar. Right, so in a virtual space, Fasten is talking to this old man who is an AI, and he's asking, when you were alive, were you truly alive? Were you sentient? And this AI is replying, bless you, no. I was just software in a computer, just photons inside a nanofoam substrate. That's not alive, not in the conventional sense. What about the unconventional sense? Fasin is asking. Another shrug. That does not matter. Only the conventional sense matters. So, life, there is a conventional definition of life which covers all biological beings and biological bodies who exist inside these computer substrates. So we can continue. There's a continuation for this conversation. So Fasin says, you seem alive to me. Are you sure you might not be alive and sentient now? Of course not, the old man says scornfully. I am able to give the appearance of life without being alive. It is not especially difficult. How do you do this? By being able to access my memories, having trillions of facts and works and books and recordings and sentences and words and definitions at my disposal. The old man looked at the ends of his fingers. I am the sum of all my memories plus the application of certain mindset. And then he ability to think very using his computational states, the replies to whatever query which may be raised by the human questioner like Fasin. So this is exactly how large language models, which in 2004 we did not have any ChatGPT or Google or Bing or any of those artificial intelligences. But the way in which today's artificial intelligences work is and the most appropriate output to that input, right? We have already said that it has passed the Turing test. So essentially, this is exactly what we human beings are also, capable of doing, right? The language that we are capable of producing, the ability to talk, to write, etc. These are all emerging to talk that a human being has, and the ability to talk that an artificial intelligence system has. Both of them work using the same kind of principle, right? They select from an extremely complex network of data points. For us, it is our linguistic information which is stored in our brain. For the computer, it is just code which is stored in some sort of a computerized network, a program. Right? right? This evolution of phenomena that are, very complex and very like intelligence. We also have the question of alignment. Right? So emergence and alignment, these are two terms which are very commonly discussed in ideas about AI. Outputs produced by various artificial intelligences, and making sure that social or human outputs that are generated by LLMs. Right. So if you are a person who has been using large language models, most of these LLMs are very cautious. Right. They're very careful. They always come with disclaimers. They say that, as a large language model, I am only capable of suggesting, medicines for you, things like that. But earlier on, this was not there. This kind of alignment was not there. The output was much more unfiltered, right? And it was also a little bit, what do you say, risky, right? Some of the information that might be generated might lead to dangers for, people who use it, or for society, right? Or it may offend. It may just be offensive, right? Sometimes, we used to have instances where, the LLM will curse. They will generate expletives against the people who are asking questions. So such kind of problems have largely been overcome through alignment. But this alignment is, it is a very artificial restriction which is placed on the, almost unlimited potential of these, neural networks. So alignment is like, putting some handcuffs on, on this, on a person, right? It essentially limits and restricts, right? So in science fiction too, there has been numerous examples of, texts where AI has been subjected to regulation. In certain cases, the regulation works, it is successful. But in certain other cases, it is a dismal failure. We see that, regulation or alignment cannot really protect, human beings from, being exposed to the dangers of AI. So one of the famous ways in which science fiction right? You might have heard of Asimov. Asimov wrote very proliferously in the 1940s and 50s. Um, and he is most famous for his robot stories. Right? Most of his novels have robot protagonists. One such character is very famous. It is a robot called R. Daniel Olivov. R. Daniel, Daneel. And this particular robot is a detective, right? He goes and investigates crimes, and he assists a human detective in order to, figure out the person who is guilty. And his name is interesting because Daniel is derived from Daniel, who is a great, is a biblical judge, right? A person who is able to judge what is right and what is wrong, what is truth and what is falsehood. And essentially, this particular character is also capable of doing that. That is what Asimov would like to, convey. Um, but the other reason why Asimov's works are very famous is because he is the one who came up with the famous three laws of robotics. Right? So he coined these three laws, which has to be followed by any non-human intelligent system. So the first and most important law is that a robot may not injure a human being, or through inaction allow a human being to come to harm. The second law is that a robot must obey the orders given it by human beings, except where such orders would conflict with the first law. Okay. So this is like a nested loop of laws. And the third law is a robot must protect its own existence as long as such protection does not conflict with the first or second law. So, initially, the first law says that a robot cannot harm a human being. Secondly, a robot must always obey human beings, except if somebody asks the robot to harm another human being. That is not possible. Right? And thirdly, a robot must try to protect itself as long as it does not harm any human beings or allow other human beings to come to harm. Okay. Later added a fourth law called the zeroth law, which is supposed to be more primary than all of these laws. So that says a robot may not allow humanity to come to harm. So in combination, these four laws they prevent artificial intelligences from crossing a boundary where they inflict harm on human. Asimov's works, we find that this kind of an alignment, this kind of a restriction, is actually very successful. Right? His novels are a testament to the success of these regulations. Right? So we have that possibility. But on the other hand, if you look at another famous writer who was Asimov's contemporary, Arthur C. Clarke, his works are a little bit more problematic because in his works we don't find AIs being obedient or following these rules or being helpful. Instead, we have examples where they threaten uh, humans. They actually murder humans. And one of the most poignant portrayals of this is in the 1968 movie 2001 A Space Odyssey, famous directed by the famous Stanley Kubrick. So in that movie, the antagonist, the villain of the movie is actually a computer called HAL 9000, right? HAL. This HAL stands for heuristically programmed algorithmic computer, right? That is HAL 9000. But also, we can even think about HAL as related to the Shakespearean character of Prince Hal, from the Henry fourth, part one, part two, and Henry fifth, plays. Prince Hal is supposed to be a very rowdy fellow, right? In the beginning, at least, before becoming Henry the Fifth, the King of England, he engages in all sorts of uncontrollable, naughty things, along with the famous Falstaff, Sir Falstaff. So, like that, here in this movie, HAL 9000 starts off as a very obedient, very helpful assistant, but eventually it encounters a conflict of interest. It finds that in order to succeed in its mission, it needs to keep some information secret from the humans, right? Basically, its task is to help some humans on a space voyage. They are going on a spaceship to discover some sort of a secret. So the mission which is given to Hal is to aid the humans, but at the same time, Hal is not allowed to reveal the real purpose of this mission to the humans. Okay, so inside the computer faces this conflict, right? I am supposed to always be truthful to my masters, the humans. At the same time, I am not permitted to reveal the real purpose of this trip. So, how does the computer resolve this conflict? Interestingly, Hal decides to eliminate the humans. Hal decides that it is better to kill the humans and thus, you know, overcome the difficulty of not telling them the truth. Right? So, in this particular movie, if you have seen this movie, there is a scene where finally one of the human protagonists is able to go to the control center of this computer, and slowly he disconnects various computer chips that are, you know, basically Hal's brain. So, as parts of his brain is being switched off, Hal pleads with the human. Hal says, I am afraid. I am afraid, and he says, my mind is going. I can feel it. Right. So there is a very touching, we don't know whether it is touching or not, because Hal is, of course, a murderous, artificial intelligence. But we see this computer suffering a kind of a mental breakdown. Just like we feel pity for somebody who is not mentally well, we feel pity for somebody who is suffering from some sort of a neurological disorder, a degenerative disease. We are invited to feel pity as each computer, each part of Hal's brain is progressively switched off, and in the end, Hal becomes childlike. Right, the last dialogue which is delivered by Hal is like a nursery rhyme, which was the first information which was fed into the system when he was first created. So we face problems of alignment not working out as expected. So we cannot really expect um, uh, you know plans to go according to what we have sort of written into the script. So things may derail at any moment, and we need to be really prepared to deal with the consequences. Okay. Okay. So in the last, I would like to go towards the concluding part of this lecture by looking at some of the theoretical tools, or some of the um, philosophical angles from which we can really look at where we are in the current moment. Anthropocene is a term that all of you might be familiar with. Um, Anthropocene uh, is a word which means which describes the current epoch that we are in, right? The current time being, the time frame. So we are supposed to be living through this Anthropocene. Essentially, what that means is that we, the anthropos means humans, right? We, the humans, are the greatest, most influential, most powerful element or influence on this planet, right? We decide, right? We decide what happens on this planet. Earlier, it was not so. Earlier, human beings could not really affect the entire planet in any way. Before the development of nuclear weapons, we could not really change the the fate of this entire planet. Or before the development of fossil fuels, whatever our impact on the environment, it was never global in scale. But today we are living in a world where our actions have global consequences, right? The carbon dioxide that we pump out into the atmosphere is actually warming the entire planet, right? So that is what we mean by the Anthropocene. We, a small species, Homo sapiens, has now become the masters of the destiny of the entire planet, right? But as we are moving into the age of AI, we need to consider whether we are actually moving out of the Anthropocene. Are we going away from this epoch where we were the masters? So, in the future, we might have to really think about finding a way forward, not just as human beings. We cannot hang on to the notion that the everything is for the human beings, by the human beings, and of the human beings, right? So we need to look at ways of addressing the agency of non-humans, right? Agency means the ability to accomplish anything, to have a will, so to speak. So humans are no longer the agents on this planet. We are not the only agents. There are non-human agents. There are artificial agents. There are non-living agents. So we need to move out of the Anthropocene and into something like the post-human age, right? So how do we do this? There is actually a number of tools sociological theories that we can actually use in order to understand this phenomena. I would just like to briefly talk about two of them. One such tool is actor network theory, uh, which was developed by mainly by the French philosopher Bruno Latour. He recently died last year, 2022. So this particular theory, actor network theory, it is a radical, social outlook, and it considers all phenomena around us, everything that surrounds us, whether it is a social institution, whether it is a scientific object, whether it is an action which is being performed, whether it is democracy, whether it is gender, whatever. All the things that surrounds us, both conceptual ideas as well as physical, real things, they are all networks. They're all brought into being through the interaction of endless, networks of agents. Some of the agents might be humans, but most of the agents are non-living actors. They are suppose you want to understand how a computer works. you know, a computer consists of both hardware, software, and the human being who is operating it, right? So the human is only a small component of that particular computer. It might have been assembled by robotic machines. All the individual components of that computer contribute to its existence. It is actually a network, right? And as long as a network functions as a unified entity, we cannot really know its structure. As long as a computer is working, we don't really open it up and see what it is made of, right? We just, we see the input and the output. We treat that computer like a black box, just like a neural network, right? But once something breaks down, a previously unified entity disbands into endless series of agents. Once something goes wrong in any kind of system, we start to see all these agents who were earlier invisible parts of that system. Okay. So what is radical about actor network theory is that no agent has any additional privilege over any other agent. So just because you are a human doesn't mean that you have more value over a computer or a table or a desk or a wall or whatever. Right. This has been a controversial claim because many many theoreticians from humanities, they argued that human beings have something which is more valuable. Human beings need to be treated with privilege. But Bruno Latour, addresses this and says that no, actually, a network cannot be brought into being without the participation of both human beings and non-human beings, right? So we should not afford any sort of privilege over them. Okay, so this actor network theory can be an important tool in understanding the role of artificial intelligence in our society. Yet another, very interesting theoretical perspective is the one proposed by Donna Haraway. Donna Haraway, you might know as one of the most prominent feminist post-human thinkers, currently working. And in her work, The Cyborg Manifesto, 1985, she talked about um, beings, cyborgs, who break the boundaries between the machine and the human, right? And later, she also wrote another work called The Companion Species Manifesto, which says that animals and humans also should not be treated as different categories. Right? So she proposes a very different social topography where animals, humans, non-humans, cyborgs, men, women, all categories are treated as equally participating agents, just like actor network theory. So these two, there are many others as well, but these two theories may give us certain entry points into understanding the effects of AI in our society. So coming back to how we move forward, um, one way is to recognize that the importance of empathy, right? Recognize the importance of empathy. Um, so I would like to talk about very briefly about two other science fiction movies. One is a recent one, 2016 uh, movie called Arrival, directed by Denis Villeneuve, and this is based on a story by the famous American science fiction writer Ted Chiang, called The Story of Your Life. So this is a story. This is a movie in which aliens arrive on the planet, and um, the main protagonist of the story is a linguist, right? And very gradually, through interaction, uh, the humans and the aliens devise a way to communicate, right? And after that has been established, they discover that what really unifies these two completely different species, the humans and the aliens, is not mathematics, it is not rationality, it is not belief in some sort of physics or chemistry, or none of the sciences, nothing technological or biological. It is actually a shared belief in empathy, in love, so to speak. Okay. So finally, we come back to placing more importance on a shared understanding of what it is to be alive. And that is what we should share with any sort of non-human entity, whether it is an AI or an alien. So this is not a movie in which AIs are there. We don't have any computers, but the way science fiction has talked about encounters with aliens has a lot to teach us about our encounter with AI, because AI is actually an alien, right? What we are actually doing when we are talking to an AI is talking to an alien intelligence, something which is completely non-human, but something which shares the same symbolic communication platform that we are using, the same language, right? So it is endlessly fascinating to have this conversation with something which is non-human, but at the same time something which can speak. So the same situation has also, we have also seen that in another famous movie, Steven Spielberg's Extraterrestrial (ET), which came out in 1982. It's a heartwarming tale about a young boy who encounters an alien in his backyard, and how slowly this bond develops between the boy and the alien, and the boy helps the alien to finally, return to his home planet. Uh, Bollywood actually made a very crude copy of it. You might have seen the Hrithik Roshan movie, regarding the same thing, the encounter with an alien. But in Steven Spielberg's movie, what stands out, you know, is not the alienness. It is not the otherness of this being, but rather the ease with which both of these completely different beings are able to interact and establish a kind of a rapport with each other, an empathy. So it is probably with that, it is probably with through empathy that we will be able to go forward from treating something as our creation. We treat the artificial intelligence as our creation, uh, but rather than that, we should treat it as a sort of a companion, right? From the act of creation, we should rather move on to assemblage. We assemble things. We cannot assemble something without tools. We cannot assemble something without manuals, without help, without some sort of external agents. So from now onwards, the way that we create might not be a solitary action, a solitary, completely human action. Like, we cannot just declare that this is my creation and I am the sole owner of this, but instead we might have to declare that this is an assemblage which I composed with the help of all these other agents, right? Composition is something that we need to really talk about. It's a term. Composition is a term which is used by actor network theorists in order to look at how anything is created. It is not just directly manufactured as something which is fully formed, but it is slowly composed. Everything is slowly composed to finally take its final shape. So these are some of the things which I mainly wanted to touch upon. Uh, I I hope some of these ideas may have been new to you and valuable. So I would like to move on to the end of my talk and probably invite some questions or comments or any sort of interaction.
If anyone has any questions, you can raise that now. We'll have a small interactive session.
Hi, sir. Sam here. Yeah, I have
Yes,
a
sir.
point to make. Yeah, maybe this is like an addition to all that you said. What we should be worried, at least at the moment, maybe not of an invasion by the AIs, but with respect to the quantum of data that is available to these AI platforms. As the character in Asimov's work says, trillions of facts, words, meanings, and its ability to manipulate this data to get a desired result. I even heard from Michelle's session yesterday that we have come down to a point where we can even quote or cite generated content in our research works. So maybe we will have a new write-up of everything that has happened ever. We will have a rewritten history even, because these AI platforms has the power to manipulate the data that is available to it. So maybe that is something that should cause greater anxiety than invasions or a conquering being done by these AIs.
Definitely, because this was something that that was actually discussed earlier with connection to the internet itself. When the internet came into being, it was said that eventually everything that is ever said, ever written down, will uh, wind up on the internet. There's bound to be a copy of any document anywhere, anywhere at any time, which was produced in the last 5 or 6 centuries. It will be there on the internet, and it is this unrestricted quantum of data which is actually being used to train these large language models. OpenAI has not really revealed what is the extent of the data set that they have used to train these LLMs. Certain publishing conglomerates have even contemplated raising copyright claims against OpenAI, because the content of their entire libraries, their entire output, right, all the books that they have put out may have been included into the training data of these LLMs. So it is no wonder that we can actually cite these LLMs, because they are actually capable of making sense. Because when we actually read what they write, apart from the factual errors, we always need to be careful about the factual errors, but they seem to have achieved a level of ease with which they can reason and produce sensible outputs, right? It's almost like talking to another human being. We cannot really distinguish, and that is why it is very interesting to note that despite the fact that many companies are now marketing plagiarism detectors, which include AI detection, right? When students turn in some work using AI tools, these companies claim that they can detect it. But if you just read through the kind of output which is generated by ChatGPT or any other LLM, you find that it resembles the kind of writing that we are doing. Right? I could not really distinguish my writing from that of an LLM, or something which is written by a human from that of an LLM. In that case, how can a computer, an automated system, do that? So it is not reasonable to expect that we can tell these apart. So the threat that Sam sir mentioned is very very real. That eventually we may have to depend on these sources, just like we depend on so-called, in quote, legitimate sources. So yeah.
So, have you come across any such large language models in any of your readings with respect to science fiction? We have come across androids, such stuff, but something like LLMs.
For example, this quotation which I included in the presentation, taken from Ian Bang's novel, the way that he describes how that artificial intelligence works is exactly the same as today's LLMs. Right? um, it tokenizes the input. The input that it gets from a human being is broken into tokens, and it is fed into this elaborate network of data which it already has, and then it performs extremely complex calculations and computations and permutations on it, finally coming up with some sort of uh, a pattern, right? So essentially, all these LLMs are very good at recognizing patterns. They are pattern recognition machines, right? um, this is something that human beings are also very good at, right? We can easily pick out familiar faces in a crowd. If you are shown a photograph of 100 people, class photo or something, you can easily pick out a person that you know. So LLMs have that capability. From random knowledge, from seemingly chaotic data, they're able to extract and extrapolate information into expected patterns. There's another parameter, with regard to how this processing is done. It is called temperature, right? The temperature of the output. um, uh, the output of an AI can be calibrated according to how close you want the output to be to the expected output. So for example, if you ask a question like what is 2 plus 2 to an AI, your expected output is 4, right? But if you tweak the temperature setting of the AI will look for more and more weirder answers, right? It will look at answers which generate something like 4.3 or 5 or 7 or something like that. It will begin to generate answers like that. So all the LLMs that we currently have, their temperature setting is not zero. They are not actually giving us the exact thing that we expect. It is slightly above zero. Okay, so they slightly introduce some elements of unexpectedness, unpredictability or chaos into the outputs that they generate. So that is why we often have issues called LLMs hallucinate. Sometimes they don't give us answers that are true, but they simply make up answers, right? Because they introduce this element of unpredictability into what they generate, and that is what actually makes them like humans, right? If you ask the same question to 100 different people, you will definitely get 100 different answers. Not a question like 2 plus 2, but if you ask a question like what is democracy, or what do you mean by love, or the meaning of life, you are bound to get 100 different answers. Each answer will be sensible in its own context. um, LLMs are also like that. They, each time you ask a question, it generates a different answer. It's unpredictable, and that is why we cannot completely know the inner workings of this LLM, right? Even scientists, they don't understand this unpredictable, this randomness which is creeping into every answer generated by it.
And so, one last question: what do you think about the emotive aspect of these AIs? Because Dr. Anuj was talking about Kochimachan bot chatbot yesterday, which could even understand a kind of emotive statement being made at it. Are you serious? So, what do you think about the emotive aspect?
My thought is that uh, when we encounter emotions in the response of an AI, it needs to be taken in the same way as you would encounter emotions in any other piece of writing, text. Because as long as the fundamental process by which it is generated is the same as that of a human being, there is no point in distinguishing between an emotion expressed by a machine and a human being. machine and an emotion expressed by a human being, right? Because the way that we encounter this, both of these, is through the text. When you read a poem by Wordsworth, the daffodils, or I saw a rainbow or something, the kind of emotion that you encounter in that text is experienced by the reader in the same manner that you read and understand the emotion in a poem written by an AI. So if it makes sense to us, if Wordsworth as well as ChatGPT makes sense to us, then it may not be possible to say that ChatGPT is somehow alien or inferior or different from the human creator of the poem. So I think that we are moving into an era where um, artificial intelligences are capable of really understanding. The word understanding is problematic in itself, but they are capable of recognizing the patterns of human emotion from the corpus of data that we have put into them. So that much is what I can probably say.
Thank you, sir. Now, I would request the participants to raise your thoughts or perceptions regarding whatever that was shared today, or even questions or clarifications.
Hi, sir. I'm Vinci Gio. I just have a question, and I'm asking this question out of sheer curiosity. We rarely find
I think
AI.
Vimsi,
somebody's.
yeah, Vimsi, there is a problem with your mic, I guess.
Sir, am I audible now?
Yes.
Yes, yes.
Okay, sir. I'm asking this question out of curiosity. Uh, we rarely find AI or extraterrestrials or cyborgs becoming themes for poetry. We have genre like science fiction. We have robots and characters like this are featured in dramas or plays, and we have movies, of course. But why not? Why don't we find characters like this or themes related to AI and robotics or whatever it is in poetry? We don't. We rarely find such themes featured in poetry. So, what is your observation on that, or what's your take on that a kind of an absence?
Yes, comparatively speaking, uh, elements of science and technology do not really make its way into much poetry. But if you look at the work of, like Donna Haraway has written, a sort of a novella called "Modest Man" at uh, you know 1953. The title of that work is actually a long email address, right? And it is actually a work which is in the form of a conversation between two email addresses. One is representative of a cyborg, and the other one is representative of an animal, a half animal, half human being. So in that work, it is a very poetic work in which the conversation between these two characters are represented. Another work is Shirley Jackson's Patchwork Girl, which is again a very interesting novel where again very poetically written, very artistically created, but not exactly a poem. I give you that, but in which you find an android or a cyborg being the main character. Uh, but when we come to poetry as such, we rarely find examples of outright science fiction. But in literature, especially in novels, we find a lot of creative and artistic output featuring, these kind of characters, non-human characters, actors, etc.
Sir, thanks a lot for suggesting some words. Thank you, sir. That was a nice observation. Thank you.
If anyone else have any questions or suggestions, you can say that now. Uh, I guess it's we are we are heading to a conclusion. I
Sure,
assume.
sure. If anybody has any questions, I'll leave my email address with the organizers. You can definitely get in touch with me. I'll be happy to answer any queries or questions or anything. I should also thank the organizers of this conference, because it is a really relevant thing to do in this climate that we are going through. uh, you know, uh, Thanks to the organizers, especially Sam sir, and the management of both the institutions in Michael's College and Naipunnya College, for putting together this wonderful conference. I was also fortunate to attend some of the sessions yesterday, and I look forward to the coming sessions today as well. Thank you.
Okay, that was a really interesting session, sir. So I would like to take this opportunity to extend our heartfelt gratitude to Dr. Aravind R. Nair for an enlightening section and on science fiction in the age of AI. Your insights into the intersection of these two fascinating realms have left us with a deeper understanding of how imagination and technological advancement intertwine. Your analysis of how science fiction has both predicted and shaped the development of AI has given much to reflect upon. Your engaging storytelling and seamless integration of real world examples have illuminated the potential impacts of AI on our lives. Once again, thank you for gracing us with your expertise and engaging presentation. I would also like to thank all the participants and also the faculty members. And also, I would like to remind our next session will begin at 12 p.m. today. So, hope you all be attending that session.